You see a booming democracy, a rising tiger, a nation destined to be the world's third largest economy by the end of the decade. But behind the curtain of India's glittering stock market and its digital revolution, a handful of industrial titans are making decisions that could either bankrupt the nation or make it the world's richest. This is not about 1 billion people, it's about 20 families. We are told that India is the new land of opportunity, but here is the reality. A staggering concentration of wealth that the world hasn't seen since the Gilded Age in America. While you watch the headlines about GDP growth, a quiet consolidation is happening. From the data on your phone to the salt in your kitchen, from the ports that receive your fuel to the airports where you land, almost every critical artery of the Indian state is owned by a few last names. But here's the part nobody talks about. This isn't just about greed. It's about a high-stakes gamble between the state and the super rich. And if this gamble fails, the entire global economy feels the shockwave. To understand how India became a land of 20 kings, we have to go back to the Permit Raj. For decades, India was a fortress of bureaucracy. If you wanted to manufacture a bicycle, you needed a license. If you wanted to increase production by 10 units, you needed a stamp from a government official. It was a system designed to prevent monopolies, but it did the exact opposite. It created a class of insiders who knew how to navigate the maze. When the gates finally swung open in 1991, these families didn't just walk through, they charged. Suddenly, the old guard, the Tatas, the Birlas, found themselves in a race against a new breed of aggressive entrepreneurs like Dhirubhai Ambani. They weren't just building companies, they were building ecosystems. But here's where it gets interesting. These families didn't just compete in the market, they became the market. When you buy a SIM card in India today, you aren't just choosing a service, you are choosing which billionaire's vision of the future you want to fund. Now, this changes everything because the scale has reached a tipping point. In the last decade, we've seen the rise of what economists call national champions. These are a select few groups, most notably the Adani and Reliance empires, that have aligned their corporate goals so perfectly with the government's national goals that the line between the state and the corporation has started to blur. They build the roads the government wants. They build the solar parks the government needs. But this creates a paradox. The paradox is this: India needs these titans to compete with China. Without their massive capital, India cannot build the infrastructure required to become a superpower. But by handing over the keys to the kingdom, India has created a too-big-to-fail scenario that makes the 2008 financial crisis look like a minor tremor. It's not just through profit, it's through debt. To build these massive ports, mines, and green energy plants, these families have borrowed billions from Indian state-owned banks. This is where the tension spikes. If one of these empires were to crumble, it wouldn't just be a corporate bankruptcy. It would take the Indian banking system, the life savings of millions, and the nation's credit rating down with it. But here is the part that will shock you. While the world focuses on the risk, the titans are doubling down. They are entering the everything phase. They aren't content with just power and steel. They are moving into your data, your groceries, and your media. When the news you watch is owned by the person who provides your electricity, the very concept of a free market begins to transform into a managed corporate state. Now, you might be thinking, is this just how emerging economies grow? Look at South Korea and the chaebols, or Japan and the zaibatsu. They used this exact model to escape poverty. But here is the twist, the part nobody saw coming. In South Korea, the government eventually broke the absolute power of the families to allow for innovation. In India, the families are becoming more powerful than the regulators. This is the billionaire paradox in its purest form. To grow fast, India needs the billionaires, but to grow sustainably, it needs to survive them. But here is the problem. We are seeing a missing middle. While the top 20 families thrive, The medium-sized businesses, the ones that actually create the most jobs, are being squeezed out. They can't compete with the lobbying power, the cheap credit, or the sheer scale of the titans. This creates a winner-take-all economy, where the pack to the middle class is being walled off by a golden fence. This leads us to a deeper insight into the global power play. The world is watching India as the alternative to China. But if India's economy is controlled by a narrow oligarchy, is it really an alternative, or just a different version of the same concentrated power? Western investors are pouring money into India, but that money is disproportionately flowing into the coffers of these same 20 families. We are essentially funding the privatization of an entire subcontinent. If this system holds, India becomes an unstoppable industrial machine. If it breaks, it creates a vacuum that could destabilize the entire Indo-Pacific region. The stakes couldn't be higher. We are witnessing the largest experiment in crony capitalism turned statecraft in human history. It is a race against time. Can these families modernize India before their own weight collapses the bridge they are building? So, when you see the headlines about India's soaring GDP, don't just look at the numbers. Look at the names. The story of India's future isn't being written in the parliament, it's being written in the boardrooms of Mumbai and Ahmedabad. The next time you see a Made in India label, remember, you aren't just buying a product, you are participating in a gamble that will decide the fate of a fifth of humanity. This war for the soul of the Indian economy is already over. The families won. Now we just have to wait and see if the rest of the country survives the victory.